They were more than best friends, they were sisters in every way except blood. Kamisha Rollins and Teyana Briggs had been inseparable since childhood, sharing secrets, laughter, and the kind of bond that seemed unbreakable. Through the ups and downs of life, through every heartbreak and triumph, they stood side by side. When Teyana got engaged, there was no question who would be her maid of honor. Kamisha was the first person she called, and together, they planned a bridal shower fit for a queen. But beneath the surface of their picture-perfect friendship, something dark had been festering for years, something Teyana never saw coming. On what was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of her life, surrounded by friends, champagne, and celebration, Teyana walked straight into a trap. A trap set by the one person she trusted the most. By the next morning, Teyana was missing. The party had ended, the guests had gone home, and the beautiful bride-to-be had vanished without a trace. As the hours stretched into days, panic turned to horror. And when the truth finally came out, it left an entire city in shock. A best friend's loyalty is supposed to be unshakable. But what happens when love turns to resentment? When admiration turns to jealousy? And when a woman who should have been standing at the altar ends up in a shallow grave? This is the story of a betrayal so cruel, so calculated, that it sent shivers down the spine of everyone who heard it. A story of secrets, envy, and a sinister plot that unfolded in the dead of night. How did a lifelong friendship turn into a blood-stained crime scene? And what could drive someone to set up the person they claimed to love like a sister? Before we dive into this chilling case, take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Because trust is a dangerous thing, and sometimes, the people closest to us are the ones we should fear the most. Kamisha, Cami Rollins and Teyana Briggs had been best friends for as long as anyone could remember. They were the kind of duo people admired, the inseparable sisters who had each other's backs no matter what. From childhood sleepovers to adulthood milestones, they had been through it all together. But what the world didn't see, what Teyana never suspected, was that beneath Cami's unwavering smile lay something much darker. Cami was a hairstylist, struggling to make ends meet in Houston, Texas. While she was talented, she was never the best, never the one people raved about. In an industry where reputation meant everything, she often found herself living in Teyana's shadow. Because Teyana had it all, the beauty, the confidence, the career that was taking off faster than anyone expected. As a rising financial consultant, she was securing major clients, traveling for work, and building a name for herself. And to top it all off, she had a fiancé who worshipped the ground she walked on, Devonte Lyles. Tall, successful, charming, he adored her. Their engagement had been the talk of social media, the kind of love story people envied. To the world, they were the ultimate duo, laughing in pictures, hyping each other up, sharing memories that people envied. Teyana often called Cami her ride or die, the one friend who had been with her through it all. She had no idea that the woman standing beside her, smiling at her success, was the same woman who was quietly planning her downfall. When Teyana announced her engagement to Devonte Lyles, Cami faked happiness. She laughed, she hugged her, she posted glowing captions about how her best friend had found her perfect match. But deep inside, she seethed. It wasn't just about jealousy. It wasn't just about feeling left behind. It was about revenge. Because years ago, before the career, before the social media fame, before Devonte, Teyana had done something Cami could never forgive, something that had broken her in ways no one ever knew. Teyana had unknowingly slept with the man Cami had been in love with. It had been a one-time mistake, a drunken night that meant nothing. Teyana had apologized profusely, swearing she never knew how deep Cami's feelings ran. And maybe, at the time, Cami had pretended to forgive her. Maybe she had even convinced herself she had moved past it. But deep down, it festered. And with every year that passed, with every success Teyana achieved, with every moment that made Cami feel small in comparison, that resentment grew into something darker. By the time the wedding plans began, the hatred had taken root. And that's when Cami knew. This wasn't going to end with another fake smile. It wasn't going to end with another forced toast, another moment of watching Teyana shine while she stood in the background. No, this was going to end in blood. The plan came together easily. Cammy convinced Teyana that she needed a bridal shower as extravagant as her wedding, a lavish weekend at a luxury Airbnb outside of Dallas. It would be intimate, exclusive, just the closest friends and family. A night to celebrate Teyana's happiness. A night to honor the woman who had everything. But for Cammy, it was the perfect setup. Because once they were there, isolated from the rest of the world, there would be no escape. Cammy knew she couldn't do it alone. That's when she reached out to the one person who had always been willing to get his hands dirty, Marquise "Cuz" Hightower. An old flame, a mistake she had never fully let go of, Cuz was the type of man people feared. Gang-affiliated, ruthless, and always looking for a payday. And Cammy had the perfect offer. $15,000. That's what she promised him to make Teyana disappear. Cuz didn't ask why. He didn't need to. When you live the kind of life he did, the reasons don't matter, only the money. And Cammy had made it simple. She'd make sure the security cameras at the Airbnb were conveniently malfunctioning. She'd plan distractions to keep guests from noticing anything suspicious. She'd create the perfect alibi so that when it all went down, she'd be exactly where she needed to be, smiling, laughing, acting like she had no idea what was happening just feet away. Cammy told herself this was justice. That Teyana had taken something from her all those years ago, and now it was time to even the score. That this wasn't just about one man, it was about every time she had felt invisible, every time Teyana had been the center of attention while she faded into the background. This wasn't jealousy anymore. This was payback. And as the night of the bridal shower approached, Cammy watched Teyana with a sick sense of satisfaction. Teyana was so happy, so carefree, so completely unaware of the fact that the woman she called her best friend had already decided that she wouldn't live to see her wedding day. The night of the bridal shower was perfect, exactly how Teyana had imagined it. The room was filled with love, laughter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Her closest friends surrounded her, celebrating not just her upcoming wedding but the life she had built for herself. She was glowing, effortlessly beautiful, and undeniably happy. Cammy was right beside her, playing the role she had mastered, best friend, biggest supporter, the one who had been there through it all. She laughed, she toasted, she showered Teyana with praise, making sure the night felt as magical as possible. But behind every smile, behind every embrace, there was something else, something far more sinister. Because while Teyana celebrated her future, Cammy was making sure she didn't have one. Everything was set. Cuz and his crew were outside, waiting in the shadows, ready to strike. The Airbnb security cameras had been accidentally unplugged earlier in the day. The music inside was loud enough to drown out anything happening just beyond the patio doors. And Cammy, she was calm, collected, knowing that within the next hour, Teyana would be gone forever. As the night wore on, Cammy knew it was time. She leaned in close to Teyana, her voice soft, full of false warmth. "Come outside with me for a minute," she said. "I want to take a picture of us by the pool, just us, like old times." Teyana, slightly tipsy but still giddy with excitement, didn't hesitate. She had no reason to suspect anything. Cammy was her best friend, her sister in everything but blood. She laughed, nodding, following Cammy toward the patio doors, stepping into the cool night air. The second the doors shut behind them, everything changed. From the darkness, Cuz and two masked men appeared, moving fast, moving with purpose. Before Teyana could react, before she could even scream, they were on her. One hand clamped over her mouth. Arms wrapped around her, dragging her backward. She thrashed, kicking, fighting. Her muffled screams barely made it past the heavy bass of the music still playing inside. Cammy stood frozen, watching, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with something else. Something twisted. Something close to satisfaction. Teyana's eyes met hers, wild with terror, silently pleading. "Cammy, help me." But Cammy didn't move. She didn't make a sound. Cuz snarled something under his breath, and then, crack. The butt of a gun slammed against Teyana's head. She went limp. The fight drained from her body in an instant. And just like that, she was theirs. Inside, the party continued. The guests laughed, oblivious. The bride-to-be's absence went unnoticed. And outside, under the dim glow of the pool lights, Teyana Briggs was being dragged into the night, completely unaware that her best friend had just sealed her fate. The moment Teyana regained consciousness, she knew she was going to die. Her head throbbed, blood trickled down her face, and the metallic taste of fear coated her tongue. Her arms were bound tightly behind her, her legs tied at the ankles. A thick strip of duct tape pressed against her lips, muffling her desperate, panicked cries. The black SUV sped through the deserted roads, the city lights fading in the distance. She tried to move, tried to struggle, but every time she did, a sharp pain shot through her ribs, a cruel reminder of the gun, but that had knocked her out. Cuz sat in the front seat, laughing with his crew like this was just another job. To them, she wasn't a person. She was a paycheck. The vehicle jerked to a stop outside an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Houston. Rusted metal doors loomed ahead, a place forgotten by time and law. The men yanked her out, her body hitting the cold pavement with a sickening thud. "Move," one of them growled, dragging her inside. Teyana's heartbeat pounded in her ears. She couldn't scream, couldn't plead, but her eyes darted frantically, looking for anything, anyone, that could save her. But there was nothing. Just darkness. Just them. They threw her onto the concrete floor. The tape was ripped from her mouth, tearing her skin. Her breathing was ragged, her body trembling, but still, she fought. "Please, please, you don't have to do this," she gasped, her voice hoarse. Cuz crouched beside her, his grin wicked. He grabbed her left hand, twisting her engagement ring off her trembling finger. "Pretty little thing," he muttered, holding it up to the dim light. "Too bad you won't be needing it." Teyana sobbed, shaking her head. Cammy set this up, didn't she?" Asterisk, her voice cracked with betrayal. Asterisk, why? Why would she do this to me? The men laughed. "You should have asked her that before she paid us," one of them sneered. And then, the real pain began. A punch to the stomach. A kick to the ribs. A blade slicing against her arm, deep enough to hurt, deep enough to make her scream, but not enough to kill. Not yet. They dragged it out, enjoying every second of her suffering. Teyana begged, pleaded, tried to reason with them. "I won't tell anyone. Please, just let me go, please," but there was no mercy here. After what felt like an eternity, Cuz grew tired. He pulled a zip tie from his pocket and looped it around her throat. Teyana's body bucked violently as the plastic cut into her skin, tightening, stealing her last breaths. Her fingers clawed at her throat, at the air, at anything. Her engagement ring was gone, her future stolen, her vision blurred. Her chest burned. And then, nothing. Her lifeless body was tossed into the back of the SUV like garbage. They drove to the outskirts of the city, to a lonely ditch off a back road where no one would find her, at least, not for a while. They dumped her there, left her to rot, and disappeared into the night, believing they had erased every trace of what they had done. But secrets don't stay buried forever. The morning after the bridal shower, the celebration was over, but no one expected the nightmare that was about to unfold. The house was quiet, sunlight creeping through the curtains as the guests slowly woke from their champagne-induced slumber. Laughter had filled these walls just hours ago, but now, an eerie stillness hung in the air. Devante was the first to sense something was wrong. He had called Teyana multiple times throughout the night, assuming she was just caught up in the excitement. But every call had gone straight to voicemail. That wasn't like her. By noon, concern turned into panic. Has anyone seen Teyana? Davante's voice was tight with worry as he paced around the house. Blank stares. Shaking heads. Cammy, ever the actress, gasped dramatically. She never came back inside, she asked, eyes wide with faux horror. Immediately, chaos erupted. Friends scoured the house, checked the driveway, the backyard, nothing. It was as if Teyana had vanished into thin air. Cammy played her part flawlessly, her voice trembling as she suggested they call the police. She clung to Davante, her eyes welling with tears. We have to find her. Something's wrong. I can feel it. And just like that, she positioned herself at the center of the search effort, desperate, heartbroken, inconsolable. But the truth? Cammy already knew exactly where Teyana was. For 3 agonizing days, Teyana's name trended across social media. #FindTeyana flooded timelines. News stations picked up the story. People speculated, maybe she was kidnapped, maybe she ran away. But no one dared to consider the truth. Then, on the 3rd day, the city of Houston was shaken to its core. A jogger, running along a deserted stretch of road, noticed something strange in the ditch, a shape, twisted and unnatural. The smell hit first, thick and foul, sending a wave of nausea through him. As he stepped closer, his breath caught in his throat. There, partially covered in leaves and dirt, was the decomposing body of Teyana Briggs. The once vibrant woman, whose smile had lit up rooms, whose future had been so bright, was now unrecognizable. Her skin was mottled, bruises and lacerations covering every inch of her. Her fingers were bent unnaturally, nails broken from the desperate fight she had put up. The autopsy later confirmed the horror: multiple broken ribs, deep stab wounds, and ligature marks burned into her neck. She hadn't died quickly. She had suffered. The news sent shockwaves through the city. Friends, family, and followers mourned. People demanded justice. But while the world grieved, detectives started digging. Something wasn't adding up. Cammy's timeline of events seemed rehearsed. Forced. And the Airbnb security footage? Conveniently, the cameras had been tampered with, wires cut cleanly, rendering them useless on the night of the murder. Then came the real break. A deep dive into Teyana's phone records revealed a disturbing connection. Cammy had been in constant contact with an unfamiliar number in the weeks leading up to the murder. That number led them straight to Marquise K's Hightower. And K's had a lot to hide. The walls were closing in. What started as whispers of suspicion had turned into a full-blown investigation. Detectives were relentless, dissecting every detail, every lie, every carefully constructed alibi. But the real break didn't come from the police, it came from one of K's own. Fear has a way of making men talk. One of K's crew members, young, scared, and facing the possibility of death row, folded under pressure. He cracked, spilling every gruesome detail in exchange for a plea deal. He told them about the money. The $15,000 blood price Cammy had paid to make Teyana disappear. He told them about the plan, the setup at the Airbnb, the abduction by the pool, the warehouse where they had tortured her for hours. And, most importantly, he told them about Cammy. She wasn't just involved. She was the mastermind. With a sworn confession, detectives had everything they needed. It was time to take her down. The arrest was a spectacle. Cammy was in her apartment, sitting in front of a ring light, mid-live stream, crocodile tears running down her face. She was playing her audience like a violin, sobbing about how much she missed her sister. "Y'all, I don't know how to live without her. This pain is unbearable." Her followers flooded the comments with messages of support. "Stay strong, sis. Teyana wouldn't want you to suffer. We love you, Cammy." Then, boom, the door burst open, shaking the walls. Before Cammy could even register what was happening, SWAT officers stormed in, weapons drawn. "Get on the ground. Hands behind your head." The phone fell from her hands, the live stream still rolling. Chaos erupted in the comments. "What's happening? Oh my God, is this real? No way." Cammy screamed, thrashed, tried to fight. She cursed at the officers, demanding to know what was going on. But the truth was already out. Handcuffed and dragged out of her apartment, she was no longer the grieving best friend. She was a murderer. And just hours later, Cuz and the rest of his crew were in cuffs too. The city that once pitted Cammy now watched in shock as the truth unraveled. The betrayal, the lies, the unspeakable cruelty, it was all exposed for the world to see. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, grieving family members, and curious onlookers filled every seat, all waiting to see the woman who had betrayed her best friend in the most gruesome way imaginable. Cammy sat at the defense table, her once perfectly styled hair now dull and unkempt. The confident, camera-ready persona she had worn so well was gone. Instead, she looked small, weak. But there was no sympathy for her here. The prosecution didn't hold back. They painted her as a cold, calculating sociopath who had spent years secretly resenting the very woman who loved her like a sister. They laid out the timeline, the messages, the payments. They played surveillance footage, dissected phone records, and displayed damning witness testimonies. Then came the photos. The jury gasped. The gallery wept. Even the most hardened journalists turned away. Images of Teyana's battered body, the deep bruises, the stab wounds, the evidence of prolonged suffering, it was all laid bare. This wasn't just a murder. It was a slow, merciless execution. Through it all, Cammy sat motionless, showing no true emotion. No guilt. No sorrow. Just emptiness. Until the moment of reckoning arrived. The jury didn't need long. After deliberating for just 2 hours, they returned with their verdict. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Teyana Briggs, guilty of capital murder." A sharp gasp rippled through the courtroom. Teyana's mother broke down in sobs. Devante clutched his chest, struggling to breathe. "Cammy." For the first time, the mask cracked. Her lips quivered, her eyes widened in shock, as if she had truly believed she could walk away from this. As if she had thought she was smart enough to get away with murder. Then came the judge's final words. "Teyana Briggs, you have shown no remorse for your actions. You orchestrated the brutal, calculated murder of your best friend. You will spend the rest of your life in prison, without the possibility of parole." That was when Cammy broke. She collapsed in her chair, shaking her head, whispering, "No, no, please." Her hands gripped the table as if trying to hold on to the last shreds of her freedom. But it was over. And she wasn't the only one who would never walk free again. 'Cause, the man who carried out the execution, received the ultimate punishment, the death penalty. His accomplices, those who had stood by and let Teyana suffer, were each sentenced to 40+ years behind bars. Justice had been served. But no sentence, no punishment, no amount of time could bring Teyana back. Her life had been stolen by the one person she had trusted the most. And in the end, Cammy wasn't just left with a prison sentence. She was left with something far worse, the weight of knowing that she had destroyed the one person who had ever truly loved her. This case is more than just a story of betrayal, it is a chilling reminder of how jealousy, resentment, and unchecked bitterness can turn into something truly monstrous. Teyana never saw it coming. She trusted Cammy with her life, shared her biggest moments, her deepest secrets, never once suspecting that the person she called her best friend was secretly plotting her death. She celebrated with her, lifted her up, and believed in their sisterhood. But behind every toast, every laugh, every moment of supposed friendship, there was a darkness growing inside Cammy, one that would eventually consume them both. Could this murder have been prevented? Did Cammy ever show signs that she harbored something dangerous beneath her smile? How do we recognize when someone close to us is masking deep resentment? How many times do we ignore the subtle hints, the forced smiles, the little comments that cut just a bit too deep? Teyana never got the chance to see the truth, but maybe we can learn from her story. If this case shocked you, make sure to like and subscribe, where we explore the darkest corners of love, deception, and revenge. Because sometimes, the people we trust the most, are the ones we should fear the most.